All right. So the quarterfinals concluded today in IM Cologne Major, right? A lot of people were watching them. The Falcons Vitality game finished like probably like 3 hours ago or something like that. And the Spirit G2 game that went to I think two overtimes uh, for two maps, right? For the last map, it was like four or five overtimes. Um, Also, so very long day of Counter Strike, right? And I am very tired, but I wanted to make a video about the Parivision moves that were happening because, in my opinion, those are the most interesting moves that are currently happening, right? Obviously, I want to watch the Clone Major, which I did, but as soon as the Clone Major finished, I wanted to make this video because I've been kind of slacking a bit in terms of the content, in terms of what I've been making, and I think these moves are really interesting, especially since I like some of the players they picked up and some of the moves they're doing. I think on paper, it makes a lot of sense, so we'll just get into it pretty quick. So Paravision signed HObbit and Slackstrez, if you don't know. Um, so if you read in this article, it sounds like the CEO basically is signing HObbit to basically add a more experienced player to the roster and to basically just like make the team a bit older so they struggle less in probably less in the late round situations, and also so somebody can help out Jame, um, which is like good decision on paper. And then they also benched Noda and they signed Slackstrez, who was on what Psycho Doctor or Psycho Face, sorry. Psycho Doctor is his teammate. Psycho Face, basically a tier 3 squad and has been farming rating wise. He had like a 1.3 for a very long time in tier 3. Just very consistent, like a statistical anomaly. I haven't seen many players consistently drop the numbers he was. And at first I was like, well, is he versing good? Is he just versing bad players and he's just farming, or is he like actually legit? So I watched a few of his demos after the Clone Major or the quarterfinals concluded today, um, because I was curious and I have some notes. But first, we'll just talk about the signings. Do I think they're good additions? Do I think benching Noda and Beljanok are good ideas? And I'm just going to say yes, I do think they're good ideas. I think Noda and Beljanok are by far the weakest pieces on this roster. I think Gilo is more redeemable, even despite his numbers looking pretty bad, because he is playing hard opener, hard entry. He's taking a majority of the first contacts on the map, and he's entering into bomb sites the most. I also think individually he's the most talented of the three, based off my eye test, right? I watched him when he was on Gun 5 and even when he was on Paravision in Tier 2, and he was very good for this team. He was electric, right? He was a big reason why they were having the success they were in Tier 2 and for Gun 5 as well, right? When he was on that roster with Tenier. Um, so I think keeping Gilo and benching these two is good. I also think like Noda by far has the best positions and just didn't deliver any numbers. So I think benching Noda makes sense in a lot of theory or in a lot of ways because I think Noda wasn't fragging even when being set up to by Gilo and Belchanok, who were basically sacking themselves in terms of the roles they took, in terms of the positions they played, and in terms of just like the overall like resources they got. Because I feel like on average, Noda had the better guns, better positions than the other two almost all the time, and he just wasn't delivering enough numbers, right? So first talking about Hobbit, do I think Hobbit is a good replacement? It depends on who he's coming in for, and it depends on how they split up the roles between him and Slash. I think Hobbit, when he was on Cloud9 slash Gambit, he was a bit of a soldier who was like played a lot of the map control positions on T side and a decent amount of the rotator positions on CT side, because he was the most experienced player, because he was the most knowledgeable player. He was like kind of a soldier that set up Shiro and Axel for the late rounds, from what I remember, but I'm not exactly sure. Um, but I do think he's good in on one win, which he's been playing for a while, right? He played in one win for quite a while. By the way, he's 32 years old. He's pretty old, but he was fragging on win win. He was their best player for a long time. Him and Latke or Lati KK, I don't know how to pronounce his name, were their best players, and he was fragging. He was still dropping numbers throughout 2026. Yes, you could argue they're a bad roster. I agree, but I don't think it's gone away. I haven't watched too many of his demos because they're all outdated, and I can't. I have to bring my CS client into an older version to watch them, and even that doesn't work sometimes. So I just decided, yeah, I'm not watching the demos. I'm just gonna assume he's still what I remember him as. Um, I was trying to find demos online. I couldn't find any. So I imagine he's still going to be pretty good, especially if you put him in the rotator positions, because I think for Noda, the fact that he lacked a lot of experience against tier 1 opposition and good opposition, I think made it his job so much harder to call on CT side and forced James to kind of just gamble stack and like sometimes just guess, right? Because he can't trust what Noda is seeing all the time. So I think for certain aggressive positions, I think Hobbit being in the team actually makes a lot of a sense for the map control positions because he can kind of help dictate how fast they're going to play, right? James obviously calls around, but Hobbit can help with the mid rounding and the late round situations, which I think they struggled in, right? I think they struggled in the late round situations and in the mid round, sometimes the mid rounding because of how he couldn't trust his pieces, right? Um, so I think with Hobbit, you're not going to have that problem, and I still think individually, from what I've heard, he's pretty good. King T seems to still like Hobbit, so he's obviously still has something if King T is still rooting for him, right? And I've always liked Hobbit. I've always thought Hobbit was a very good player. Um, Slash Jess is the other one. Slash Jess is a statistical anomaly. A lot of people thought he was cheating when he was actually first coming up and kind of being noticed in Tier 3. He's an aggressive star rifler. He plays the typical aggressive star rifler positions for the most part. Plays a lot of rotator spots like E-box on Anubis, middle on D2, outside on or like yard on Nuke, right? He plays a lot of the star roles in CT side, which Noda was doing, right? But I don't know how they're gonna do Hobbit and him, right? Um, I was like theory crafting how they could do some of the roles and split the roles between the Gilo, Hobbit, Slash Jez, and yeah, those three, right? This way he's probably just gonna take a lot of the bitch anchor roles. Um, but continuing on, and on T side, he plays some interesting positions. On Anubis, he plays middle. On Nuke, he plays the flex position because I think his IGL is playing yard or outside. So he's like throwing util, and he's sometimes lobby, and he's sometimes helping with outside. It seems like he doesn't have a lot of autonomy on Nuke in particular on T side. And then on Dust 2, he was playing middle. He wasn't playing lower. He was playing middle, which is a little odd. Seems like his IGL is a little more selfish with some of the positions he takes, which is a bit curious, but I don't mind it necessarily if the player is competent in the roles and the IGL is telling them what to do, which I imagine James will tell him what to do in the early rounds, so I don't have a problem with that. Because those are some of the notes I have on Slash Jazz. Just watching I watched 3 of his maps of his most recent game against Leo. I didn't watch. I'm gonna watch more demos just to get a greater idea. But just from what I've seen, mechanics are great, right? He has excellent pre-aim, great crosshair placement, very good spray control. Like he doesn't lose control of his spray very often. Good movement, right? He understands how to peek into angles very well. Seems to like to crouch peek a lot into angles where he thinks enemies are, so it messes with their crosshair. He has excellent tracking. He has great flicks and like micro adjustments. Like it seems like he's able to like find the headshot very consistently with like AK or M4. Um, he seems like he's able to make that adjustment very fast when he peeks into angles or when he's like surprised by the enemy. He has good pathing when he's like told to go first in the bomb sites or told to take space, right? Seems like he has great pathing, understands like how to take the space properly, right? And what his job is. Um, but so far, from what I've seen from him, I think he's just if he's going to be used by James, I imagine he's just going to be a super overqualified role player. Like his mechanics are great. Like I have no problem with his mechanics. It seems like he has decent awareness of what's happening around the map, right? It seems like he understands what's happening on the map. It doesn't seem like perfect. It doesn't seem like he has a lot of autonomy within his positions, which I think James wants. I think I was mentioning Tenzi for this position, but they went with Slackstrez, which I think is fine because I think they're using Slash as a bit of a star. I imagine they're going to use Slash as a star. Told them to trade teammates and to sometimes go first with Gilo, right? Which I'm fine with. I'm just curious how they kind of mess with the rules. I think the rules are a little weird because you have like 3 players who kind of want to play rotator. I imagine Hobbit will play some anchor. Like maybe they'll move Slash to a anchor on Mirage. I don't know what Slash actually normally plays. I imagine it's connector. Um, and they'll move like Hobbit to connector, have Gilo A. Maybe they move Slash as a cat. I don't know what they're gonna do. Like the roles are a little weird. They're a little scuffed, but I think the idea is overall good. Um, And just before I end this video, I just want to talk about Noda and Belchenok pretty quickly because when these two guys were coming out, their stats are awful, by the way, and they don't improve if you put them against the better teams, right? Right. But it's kind of sad how these two kind of fell off because when I was watching Parivision at tier 2, I was actually pretty hyped for these players. I think Noda and Belchenok were very interesting. Belchenok was a bit of a role player, right? He like played a lot of the hard anchor spots and then played extremity positions. And when they were told to go into a bomb site, he would usually be the first guy going in. Um, but I thought mechanically he was solid, right? Like he had some great first bullet headshot. Seemed like to know how to path, like when he was told to just go first and die essentially. And Noda was the star, and he was very clearly the star. Mechanics on this kid were absurd, especially his spray. His spray control was amazing at long range. It was amazing at long range. He was so good at getting multi kills. But sadly, it just didn't transfer to Paravision, which kind of sucks, right? I'm somebody who had a lot of hope for these two, but they sadly didn't live up to the potential. Hopefully, they find some new projects to go to. I think they're not bad players. I don't think they're completely useless. Again, they're still pretty young. Noda is 19 and Belchenok is 22. They're still relatively young players. Belchenok's a bit older, but um, I have a lot of faith for Paravision going forward, especially if HObbit and Jame are able to get on the same page and like kind of find their game plan together, their overall idea of how they want to play. Um, or HObbit is able to buy into the system, right? HObbit being brought in, I think HObbit's a good addition. I don't think it's a bad addition. I think having a more experienced, tenured player that the players can look up to and um, ask for guidance, right? In terms of like the positions to play and like how they should play them, or like in terms of theory or concept of the game, I think is good. Maybe it'll give James some more ideas on how to play because Hobbit's been around for a while, right? He was on Gambit, Cloud9, a bunch of different rosters, right? So I have a lot of faith for Paravision going forward. I hopefully they're a top 10 team next season, right? I don't want to see them completely fall out because I think the way they play is fun. The way they play is fun, and I like a lot of the pieces on the roster, and I still have a lot of faith for them going forward. So that's just my quick analysis of the roster update that kind of happened during the major, which is a bit interesting that happened during, but it's because they're playing XC Pro League. XC Pro League is happening pretty soon. Hold on. XC Pro League is happening July 1st, right? So that's in 11 days, right? Is it 11 days? Or am I stupid? Yeah, it's 11 days. So actually, it's happening in 11 days. So I imagine that's like I'm curious to how it's gonna look. Again, they're probably gonna be boot camping for a bit. Um, hopefully the vibes are just better. I just want the vibes to be better. The vibes on the team looked fucking awful, for quite a while. So yeah, I think this is a good move. Yeah, that's it. Plus I like Hobbit. So yeah.